thank you for giving me this opportunity to present, and so I'll just start going. This is the document we just revised recently, and just a little bit about me. That's me. This down here, little boy, and electrician, and working on my Volkswagen, and that's during the shuttle program. When I think of this 512 document, I think of this requirement here. Pretty much that's all I really ever knew about the 512, but since I'm presenting, I needed to do something for this presentation. So I started digging into it and looking for requirements that were human factor related. So, this one is cross connection. So there's a lot of requirements in the document that are kind of like spelled out requirements. And then like this one here, spelled out what to do. I found this interesting here. It talks about flight crew. So it is also,
So we hold on to this for a second. So which line do you want me to look? B? Is that what I'm looking? Where am I looking?
C.
C.
So this is very much,
Right. Okay.
so it also, it addresses like the flight crew, which I never knew. And this kind of requirement usually is we have a DVM for all of our systems that they list out all the requirements. And usually for my assessment, I'll point to this for verification.
Right.
So, familiar with this one, and then I started doing some other searches. This was for sharp edges, so I found this requirement. It's about the breathing air, but it says it should, so it's a should. So, what good is that? And then, and I did another one for access. So there is requirements in there that are kind of related to human factors, which parallel what's in the human factors design standard, which is the one that we go by. And then again, I looked for visuals and did a search so I could get something. But a lot of them point to different documents. So I didn't dig down into the documents, but there could be other human factors related requirements in there. Probably is.
Manual welds need 100% visual inspection. So the ASME standards for welds actually define what training a welder should have. And the interesting thing about welder training is, I think it appears like it was written by a human factors person, even though it was like written in the 50s. It says to be a certified welder for a particular weld, and there are different kinds of welds, that you have to do 10 welds of that particular type, and you have to dissect your own welds, and they all have to be perfect. And then you get your certificate that you're a welder that can do that kind of weld. And then that certificate is good for a certain period of time, and then you have to do it again. So it's exactly what you'd want for a manual task, that the welder himself has to actually understand how his weld went. So he's part of the destructive, so you can see if they're doing NDE, you can see that, but he also does destructive testing on his own welds, and then has to do them over again if it didn't work. And so I think that's a really good way of thinking about touch labor when you have these things that are considered art, and that is the standard for welding it, which is kind of interesting. I don't see it anywhere else that it's defined that way in touch labor, but welding it is.
Thank you. I found this one, which is really good, because it's calling out to use the modeling and visualization models and things that we use at KSE, but this is a requirement there that I've never seen anybody use yet. But maybe I'll start using this one. So then these are just all the different sections, and it has the same kind of thing. Either they point to a document or they have requirements. And like I said before, this is the one I really only look at. My history of the document. And there's some more sections: electrical, mechanical, fluids, structural, so everything that we build and everything. So, so basically.
But it gives you power, right? Because it says human factors has to be done, right?
Yeah. This gives us the authority to do that. Then I start.
Damon, I missed. Maybe I tuned out. DE 512 is. What is the full name of that document?
KSE DE 512, and it comes from the 5005, the agency 5005. It's pretty much similar, very similar. It's but this one is a KSE document.
What's the title? That's a number, what's the
Oh,
title?
the title?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can
It was in the
say
beginning.
directive or, I wasn't familiar with that.
I'm sorry.
What does the D stand for? It's like design engineering or
I
something?
think so.
I think it's design engineering.
Yeah.
So it's the design engineering that's used for like GFE at Kennedy. So this is their document that they use at Kennedy to control what Kennedy is doing
For the ground systems.
for ground systems. So whether you're buying a ground system or building a ground system to scratch, this is the document that says, this is all the standards you have to have for the ground systems. And so it has all the usual stuff, but it actually says, and you have to do human factors. So most of our design standards, we're somewhere else saying we have to be there, and this one actually puts us on the list.
So, so I started looking at the revisions, and I thought, oh, that'd be kind of interesting to research that and, you know, talk about that here, but I didn't, because I found this other definition, and it talks about how you have the ground support equipment and you have the ground support systems, and we want to make them robust, safe, reliable, maintainable, supportable, and cost-effective, basically. So that's what the goal is, and I found this diagram, and it shows how the 512 can spread out to the ground support equipment and the ground support systems. And so below that, they have different examples. So I just went ahead and said, okay, well, I'll show all the different examples so everybody has like you know, an idea of what they fall under. And for example, like here, well, okay, so I started with this one, the ground support systems. So like the liquid hydrogen tank we have up there, so, you know, cryogenic storage and distribution, so I figured, okay, this is probably falls under that. And actually, this is the one that we're working on now, where there's some valves out there that, they have they have all the different where, you know, which way to turn everything, but it's all rusted. So all that stuff is already rusted off, and I have to verify it, and programs like pushing to get, this thing, you know, through DCR or SAR.
How old is the stuff
So-
that's rusted? What does it date back
It's,
to?
it's not that old, we just built this, but I guess, you know, things have been, it's,
Salt water.
Yeah.
Salt water.
Salt air environment.
yeah.
Right, good point.
So this one's the biggest, the big tank, you know, for the bigger rocket, like I said here. Oh, wait.
Does this document have an analogous center, or this is a center level document, right? Kennedy? Is there an agency level document?
This is 5005,
Okay.
so this was derived from that. It's pretty close. So this one shows the
Sorry,
size of the tank.
5005 is for ground support equipment, is that right?
And systems.
And systems, okay.
So these
So if
are,
you're designing some kind of ground flight support equipment, that's what 5005 applies to.
I mean, so why did, I'm gonna ask the question, why
Yeah.
did they make a center level document?
Why did they what?
Why did they make a center level guidance document when there's an agency level?
Doesn't 3001 have a ground support chapter?
that's for the, that has for the 3001 for the flight hardware.
Two questions, yeah, so.
And that's
let-
Charlie's estimate on that one.
Yeah, so 3001
So is Don.
applies to flight systems. 5005 applies to non-flight systems. The stuff that's used on the ground to support the flight system, right?
So so that says that you have to have a door that accesses the engine, and that's a responsibility of the SLS program to provide a door that accesses some part of the engine for whatever, testing or something else. Now, when they need to access it, they have to have ladders, scaffolding, or whatever, and so that's called ground support equipment. And so you have the same thing with airplanes, right? There's ladders, whatever, cranes.
Okay.
And then you have things that are part of the plane. And so 3001 is things that are part of the rocket or the capsule
plane,
or
right.
plane or whatever else. And 505 is for all the things you use around it that influence it, because you're pumping fuel, you're testing, you're putting, giving it electricity while it's there, and then you're gonna switch to the APU. All of those things that surround your plane or surround the rocket Are then ground support systems or,
I think I understand
right, or
Mike's
ladders.
question though, and.
oh, and
that's-
his question was, if we have 505 at the
Right.
headquarters level, why do we have
I'm sure there's a
512
reason,
DE?
it's just naive, I don't understand.
Why is it?
Because our environment's very unique, so.
Sorry, I would disagree with that. I would say the answer to Mike's question is 5005 is a standard. What your document is a program requirements document,
Okay, then maybe
right?
I'm wrong.
Which derives its requirements from the standard,
Okay,
right?
fair, that answers the question.
If that was your question,
Yeah,
right?
that was the
Okay.
question.
I mean, Marshall does that, Dennis does that, I think all centers do that.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Okay.
So it's a program document as contrasted with a NASA standard.
Yeah, but the question is, why do you need program documents if you already have?
Because programs implement
They want to
the
spell out.
intent of standards, and they may tailor the content of the standards for the specific design, the specific environment at KSC.
So 505 also applies to Wallops
Right.
that doesn't have the same characteristic as KSC does. And so that's would be,
I think it's a valid question though, because you don't, for instance, say I'm a tailor an SAE standard and change it for the next car I'm building. But programs do use the opportunity to tailor to say, I really don't want to follow this standard,
Yeah.
so I'm going
Yes.
to leave it.
I don't know who
I don't wanna
made
get
that
too deep into
decision,
that. I
but,
agree
you
with
know,
you.
we're there.
I think the standards are generic, it covers everything. When you get, when you go to the Stennis, you go to Marshall, you go to Kennedy, they tailor it to their, they bring it down to their system.
Well, yeah, but the ones that they choose, they're almost word for word what's in the standard. The ones they reject,
It's not
It's
part
not
of the
there.
system. So if
But
you
it
get audited,
it
you
arguably
get
sh-
audited, then they're gonna be looking for that stuff because it's part of that standard. And you don't want that in your program plan, you bring up your program plan, they're not gonna look for it.
Well, this is a broad and old
Yeah.
conversation.
Oh, yeah, it is,
So
Joe.
I mean, you can levy a standard on a program, or you can take requirements out of the program, out of the standard and use, and put them in the program spec.
You
That's
didn't know
what
you
they've
were
done
gonna be
here.
triggering such a debate.
But the
did
other
you?
thing, thing you can do is you can add things at the center level that aren't in the above, because of, you have unique things. So this covers the generic stuff because you're doing things that are unique, different whatever, environment. Then you add things so it's not always that a requirements document is smaller than the standard. It can be different for good reasons, because that standard was written and it needs extra things because you're doing something that there's no rules for there, and you pull it from somewhere else.
Says how you do it, like, this is the person here at this center that does this or has this approval or something like that.
Right.
Too. Benign.
Okay, it's your turn. We're sorry.
So this is the bigger tank, it's just kind of showing the difference in size from the original, the other tanks used on shuttle, so it's a lot bigger. And, just some more pictures showing some of the things, some of these things, some of the valves are hard to reach, and like I said, we're working on that now to get those verified. This is the converter compressor facility that provides the, it provides all different areas at KSC. What was it that it provides? Helium, liquid helium, the different, and that also, we're also working on that one, and that's kind of like a hot item, it's gotta get done, and, you know, in a certain amount of time, so. And then I thought, okay, so what about these other areas here, you know, I said, well, maybe the mobile launcher would be one of them, that would be all these, I hope I'm right. And then I also thought, in the VAB would capture all these areas, and, I was gonna tell an interesting story about this, this foam. When I first started working there, I might as well go tell it.
Cool.
They were up there, it was just when I first started working there, I was walking with a seasoned engineer, and they were showing me around, and they were putting this comb inside the foam, and I said, well, why are they doing that? And they said, oh, well, that allows the air to come out, you know, so the foam doesn't popcorn. And I said, oh, so they fixed the problem, and he goes, no, but it's only foam. And then, you know, so that day I went home thinking, oh, we know what we're doing, it's okay. but I didn't think it, it made sense. I thought we should fix it so it didn't
How
fall
long
off.
before Columbia was that? What?
That was in 2000 when I started working there.
Yeah,
So-
so this little thing looks sort of like a hairbrush.
And this is not the real thing. This is-
Yeah, right,
yeah.
so, but what the real thing is a block that has,
No.
pins in it, so the sharp edge is up. And so you can think of this as like a nail bed. And they're like a 1/4 inch on center. And they have a little block, and I don't know the exact size of the block. But if the inner tank has something called stringers, and the inner tank, if you look at it from the side, looks like up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And this foam is sprayed in the tracks and on the top, and that foam pops off. That foam pops off for that cryo-ingestion thing I said yesterday, because it can pull in from the tank below it, because this is it's not welded, it's actually bolted, so there's lots of slots where little things can go through. And so you can pull in at the lowest level, you can pull in something. And so they take this little block and they hand press it in to the surface to make holes the entire length of the stringers on all the stringers that are on the shuttle, were on the shuttle side of that, to put little holes for release so they wouldn't get pop foam. They got pop foam off the stringers, but most time the pop foam came from so they did it on the upside. Remember, we got up, down, up, down, up, down? Those little holes were on the upside. Often we got the foam that came off from the bottom and ripped a piece of the top with it. And so, but they only put the things on the top because that was where most of the popcorning was happening. So they solved that problem, but they didn't get rid of it entirely. In general, I told you yesterday that small thing could kill the shuttle. It has to come from much higher and at a different time. So the stringer stuff comes off, but it doesn't have a path at the size it was at the end. That was the stringer.
The soap size piece can only kill the shuttle if it comes from much higher up?
Yeah.
Because
Because of timing and.
Time and speed, accelerating,
Blah,
shuttle
blah,
has
blah,
to
blah,
accelerate
blah.
to a faster.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that the full map of foam has a
Acceleration.
size, time and everything. But these little pricks were actually to get that pressure from the inside that comes from cryopumping to just come out. And that did reduce the size of the pieces. And so foam did come off, but it reduced the size, making it annoying, but not dangerous.
Right, no, someone told me that a long
Thank you.
time
So
ago.
that kind of shaped my approach, always, trust but verify, basically.
Right.
I wish.
I wish.
Sometimes it's not, if I ever too much, I can get in trouble. But then I started looking at the ground support equipment, which is more what touches the vehicle or functionally or physically works with the vehicle, flight hardware. And these are some of the things that are, the one on the top, that's the hazardous gas leak detection system. That's inside the mobile launcher, but there's different cameras and things that measures the different gases and stuff around the vehicle and everything. That's just one example of some kind of, I figure this is a special test equipment, I'm not sure.
Right.
And then the other one down below is like a tube that goes up to the vehicle, the transport vehicle purge monitoring, goes up to the vehicle and it kind of gets really very close and it measures whatever they're trying to measure. And
So
sorry.
the vehicle has, these are whatever, they're pumping stuff in, like this inner tank, right? I assume that's the purge from the inner tank. So it's actually just circular and it goes out in the atmosphere. So they're probably trying to make sure it's the right speed,
Okay.
not too much.
I just remember we did a study to see how accurate and carefully someone
Right.
could push that thing up to, to the vehicle, so.
That'd be a good idea.
Yeah. Here's another one, this strain relief, I figured that was a pretty good example of a GSE, right there on the Orion. It's hooked up there to where all the hoses go on there, and it holds the hoses from draping onto the vehicle and from, tension, holds the tension. There's more stories to that, but I'll go ahead and tell. It's kind of, they were having a hard time reaching in there to get it and everything, and the way it was designed, it had, so much structure that they couldn't get their hands and do the side and stuff, so they eventually redesigned that and rebuilt it. And then on the list is umbilicals, so, this is two are umbilicals, and, on the other side, that's them, at the LETF, that's where they test the umbilicals. We have a big field, where we test the umbilicals to see how they work. It simulates the rocket, and we use the actual umbilical, and, and then we have a, thing that shakes like it's launching and everything. And, this is the Cruaxis arm, just another one. We did a study with this arm thing here for astronauts to get in and out of the capsule there. And here's another one, the Cruaxis arm. This is the lower deck, and they have a platform where they can go up and make the same place where they can make connections. So, just showing examples of some of the umbilicals. We have our ground special power. They're just showing some of the electrical cabling and controls. And then we have our firing room. There's ground support equipment, and we have many of these slides. This one is a fluids type slide. So all these kind of things we do a human factor assessment for. So there's, I don't know, over 40 subsystems, and we have an assessment for each one of these that we evaluate. And we go out, we initially look at it when it's static, and then we go out again and look at the live screens and make sure, we can verify kind of like the live screens. And then they follow up with, the human in the loop. That's not me, that's the other group, the human system integration group that does that. And here's an electrical example from electrical one. And then we got some fluids one. This is basically our largest one, the CMAS one, the ammonia one, and this one is an PPF, where they have the Orion vehicle. And here's a couple more. And the reason why I'm going so fast is because there's a lot of slides, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do them all in 30 minutes, so that's why I'm talking like this. And then this is one
But you
here.
do an evaluation of all those dials and everything for readability and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, to make sure, like, if you're turning the valve, you can actually read the gauge, and, the labeling is where it's supposed to be. It's not confusing, that a label is not in between two, and you
Is
get
that
confused.
stuff, that stuff is all developed by third party, right? You don't develop any of that in-house, those displays?
We do.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, like which ones do we do? The HAZGAS, we build all that in-house,
Okay.
the HAZGAS leak detection. And the other ones I think are built, like those panels were built somewhere else, and provided. And now Bechtel's doing all of mobile launcher too. So they're doing everything. Well, there's a couple things that we're doing. So, and then you have this, emergency egress system, and I didn't know, is this GSE or GSS, or, I guess it's like GSE, because we have a HFA, but we also have like, human rating to deal with the astronauts and stuff like that. And, I had to add this slide. This is something I was working on for a while to try to determine which seat is the best seat for the release, to have the release. So that's a lot of things in comparison. I did a comparison, and Cynthia knows about this, but it's a whole nother discussion.
You can go back so you can be clear what this is.
Okay.
So you can walk around on the level that the crew's at. That's where the top of the green thing is. And then if we need to and there's enough spaces for both the ground support crew and the astronauts to slide. And so you have a Disney ride that sort of slides down here.
Yeah.
And then you have a walkway, and you get in some military trucks that are sort of bomb-proof and get the hell out of the way.
Yeah.
So that's what that's about.
We use
Thank you for
roller
saying
coaster
that.
requirements to make the requirements for how fast we can go to.
A passive
Like
system
where-
too,
Yeah.
right, it's
Yeah.
passive.
And David, is the starting point on the crew access arm, but on the opposite end of the white room?
It's on the same level as the crew access arm.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're right, it's on the opposite side.
Okay.
Yeah, they have to run around the tower, right, basically, to get,
Yeah.
right?
And they don't go into a bunker when they're done,
No.
they get into a truck.
Not nowadays, they don't have the bunker. They
Well, I
have-
was just looking that little triangle looked awfully bunker-like.
Yeah, that might be the
But
existing
it
one.
may not be in
Yeah.
use today.
No, it's
So I
they're
think-
getting into a military grade, big heavy truck. And they're being driven around to the regular exit and then driven south, I think.
So, time constant of a
Yeah.
rocket explosion?
Yeah,
Well,
right.
I don't think this
Does
is.
it go faster than a military truck?
So,
Or
Don't ask that question, Lee.
or faster than you can run around the tower in a full pressure suit.
And in this particular case, you not only have to run faster than the person next to you, you have to run faster than the explosion.
well, but
So
I'm not
that's
sure
why I
this is
thought
for-
there was a bunker there where you
So
do
I
it.
don't, I'm
movies
not
all
sure
the
They might
that-
need a bunker there,
but
yeah.
I'm not sure this is actually, I'm not sure this is actually for the full rocket explosion. I mean, I think these are for other problems that could happen, because you don't expect things to be activated to the point you could actually have a rocket explosion
Why
when
would
you
you
still
need
have
the
the
tank
team
then?
there.
Or the emergency slide, let's get off really, really,
Yeah.
really
Well,
fast then.
because they're talking about, I think they're talking about other kinds of leaks that could happen when the crew's up there that are, I don't know what the purpose is. I
I
mean,
mean,
it's-
originally the slide wire in Apollo was because they were worried the Saturn V could explode.
Right.
Which, you know, raises
Not
the
gonna
same
outrun that.
question.
So, but these vehicles all have a pad aboard. So
Yeah.
the crew, if it really was a big rocket explosion, the crew's going up,
That's true.
right?
Right, but
That's
there's
true.
nobody standing on that.
Right, and at that point, but
At that
that's the
point.
point.
That's a good
So
point.
these are for other reasons that you would wanna escape the tower. I don't have the list. I've asked for it and I haven't gotten access to it yet. But I asked for access and I didn't get it
As soon as
yet.
they figure it
They
out,
promised
but-
they were working on it.
Yeah, but having been a little bit involved,
Mhm.
I was told they needed to leave in a hurry, and they wanted to know the absolute maximum that the accelerations could be, because the assumption was this is not a leisurely ride.
Right.
And so if they're in a hurry, something fast is happening, and I can't think of all the fast things that can happening that
Except
aren't
for-
really fast,
Yes,
in which case, bunker.
I understand.
Have they had a successful test of that with actual beings being in that?
There's a movie, you can Google
The
it.
Dream is alive, that did not survive, the camera was destroyed.
So the,
Yes.
so the
That's a
test,
wimpy
the
test.
movie of the test has a whole pile of people on the thing. I think they're dressed in the
Don't say pile.
appropriate gear, you know,
Right.
so you have low visibility. They've turned on the sprinkler system, so it's raining and slippery. And, they get into the vehicle, they initiate it, and everybody runs to the trucks at the other end. You can Google that movie. I think I Googled it on Google. I wasn't inside NASA. And, yeah, it's on YouTube. You can Google the ESS, August 2024 test run, and you can see the movie. Like I said, they created slippery with rain and low visibility with the suits.
And
And
they
they-
didn't do any incapacitated crew though, did they? Or simulated incapacitated?
I
That's the
don't,
sequel.
I don't remember, but, I mean, everybody was dressed in, like, the gear, like, they had some people, I mean, they had everybody dressed in gear, and they did that thing. No, I don't believe it was a good test, but there's a YouTube, you can see the test they did.
I've seen,
not a
remember
complete
seeing
test.
videos of shuttle crews training on this, but that was back in the day when they didn't wear the launch entry suits, back when I was in high school.
Yeah, well, most of the people, they have the firemen people all dressed up in whatever they would wear when they go up, if they were up there. I mean, they've got people in, outfits that have low visibility. The one thing that's interesting at the end it's like 2 feet off the ground, and so people are sort of jumping down and the thing's bouncing, and it's interesting getting off.
So, but going back to my memory of the premises that were
They may
provided.
have changed.
Okay, maybe, but the premises involved were, we can't take the elevator, cause
Right.
we're in a really big hurry.
Correct.
And we understand the ride is dangerous, but what's more dangerous is not getting far away very fast.
Right.
So if they're back to, this is gonna be used for other things, why not take the elevator?
Well, this has to be, have they timed that, Keegan?
Yes, they have.
So how much faster is this than the elevator?
Oh, lots.
A lot.
Well, I'm just, right, so.
Plus,
It's-
if you're in the elevator, you're
But
so
not
next
when
to the
you
rocket.
stop and get into a truck at the end, And that's not far enough away that the explosion has dissipated.
Well, you have to get in the truck in either case.
What?
We have to get in the truck in either case, whether it's at the base of the elevator or the base of the zip line.
Not if there's a bunker at the end of the zip line. That's
Yeah,
my
but the
point.
Or if
bunker
there's a
is
bunker at the end of the truck.
Apollo era.
Elevator too, so.
Well, the elevator's too slow to get out in an emergency, right? So the question is, what's an emergency that isn't?
No,
That's-
I
A
think,
massive ammonia leak and the elevator's broken. I don't know. Geez,
It's
I
just
said,
the
I'm
elevator's
trying,
broken.
if I had I've been trying to get a hold of the hazard analysis for the last 2 weeks, and I haven't succeeded yet, but I've been promised daily I would get it, and then I'll know the answer to your question.
Okay, thank you.
But-
It would seem extraordinarily difficult to explain how everyone survived the initial event, the ride to the base, and in the truck, nobody made it.
But it's not a regular truck. This is one of those,
It's
mean,
it's an SLS explosions proof truck.
Cynthia, what's the video?
this says that the baskets ride down the slide wires at speeds of up to 60 miles an hour.
No, it's fast.
it's fast.
Yeah.
It's-
Right, but
I agree with you, it doesn't make sense if you're
It
talking about
doesn't
an
make any sense.
explosion.
Nobody's trying to tell you it makes any sense. We're just telling you what they're doing.
Right.
impressive, but still.
Show the video.
Oh, I should have put the video in there.
No units on it?
Yeah.
It would be a shame if this is not quite enough. But that is more impressive than I thought.
What's more impressive than you thought?
Take a look at the truck they got.
What is it?
Help me find it. Yes. What you be looking for on YouTube?
EES, test, August 2024, I think. You probably need to put an ass in it or something, but no.
There you go.
There, watch the escape test.
No, this is,
All right, here we go. Here's the movie.
What do we got? Oh,
Sound is
oh, great.
muted to a certain extent.
We don't need sound.
it's a race like at a baseball game.
Yeah.
You gotta figure out which one's gonna win.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, it's like, exactly, it's,
We're gonna jump out in the end.
it's like the Seattle Mariners
The
game.
hamburger gonna win or the popcorn?
It looks so slow.
It does look slow.
Yeah, it does.
But remember,
Kaboom.
it's getting both X and Y.
The shuttle.
Yes,
Yeah.
The hypotenuse helps a
I
lot.
remember that they.
right. That's what they're counting on.
But there is that looks pretty slow. You need to find another one. There
Hope I don't have anything crazy on here.
Okay.
That's it?
That's fine. We can go back to it.
They should charge for
Aren't you
rides.
glad that you showed this picture?
I actually am. I wasn't gonna show it, but then I don't know, I figured I should. So, keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. So, this, like I said, was gonna do a risk on this, and that's still in work, and, see what happens. And then, so going back to this requirement, this is when, I go into this, what I'm used to talking about is how we do assessments, and basically, we break everything down into, different components, from the different subsystems. So this is the crew access arm, and right now we're looking at a motor here. So we look at all the components and stuff like that, and we kind of we have this checklist, so this fits within access. So then once we know we have an issue maybe with access, we go ahead and go into the design standard, pull a requirement out from the design standard, human factors design standard, which is called out from the DE 512. And then we take that requirement and we put it in an Excel spreadsheet. So you can see there, right here, we have, this thing's keep confusing me, so I'll go to the next slide. So in the spreadsheet, you can see where we put the requirement here, and we have what are we gonna do to fix it? That's in the notes, and was it satisfied? We moved the motor to get more access for it. So this is basically like a one-liner of the human factors assessment that we have for the subsystem, and this is showing there's hundreds of lines sometimes. And we do the same thing for software, but software is a little different because we tailored out requirements and made our own, a document that has the tailored requirements for our controls and displays. So for the hardware, we don't have that yet, but that's kind of like the goal. Maybe we'll have a document for KC. And so then the next part is doing verification. Sometimes we do verification